la legalización de la prostitución. ¿Viste por eso? A eso que viene en mi universidad de putas, porque eso es un tema tabú.
La gerente está escogiendo.
La gerente.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sinai. First, I want to start by thanking you all for being here. This speech is a topic that is really important to me, and I think that we should talk about it more. Because imagine looking at yourself in the mirror and not being able to see a person, but an object that has been criminalized and oppressed for so long that even they believe in themselves. Imagine being a mother that is trying to give the best to her children, but is completely disregarded by the police because of the work that she does. All of these feelings are exactly how sex workers feel. Today, I will talk about the importance of legalizing prostitution. You might be asking yourself, why should I trust or listen to anything that I say? But I want you to know that I have done the research. I have prepared myself to address this controversial topic in such a way that I can get people to at least put themselves in the shoes of sex workers. I have investigated about how legalizing prostitution has worked in other countries, and even thought about how we here in America can apply some of the progress that they made. You might also be asking yourselves, why is this relevant to me? I'm not a sex worker. I'm not trying to be a sex worker. And although that you might feel like that right now, after you listen to everything that I have to say on this topic, and you will realize how much it affects your lives, and you will understand why this issue is so important to talk about. In a nutshell, prostitution has been criminalized since the 1900s, which has led to the enrichment and empowerment of organized crime. Not only that, but also many women and men are at risk of being assaulted, raped, and abused, and abuse drugs. Who are we to decide what life is more important than another? Who can actually say that they're so morally correct that they can judge a person just for their line of work? And I think how we as a society are affecting sex workers' lives by just letting them think about themselves as less than anybody else. Most people do not realize how much prostitutes suffer for the work that they do. Everyone's first concern should be the dangers of sex trafficking. This can happen to anyone, children, men, women, no one is actually safe. It has been proven that the criminalization of prostitution adds to the risk of human trafficking. Since there is a prohibition for brothels, the black market is the best place to develop this kind of horrible business. Large criminal organizations take over the whole industry of sex work, which only makes them richer and more powerful. Since prostitutes work in the shadows, they are also in the risk of being coerced by a pimp who will take advantage of them and do as they please, because there's no one there to defend them and their basic human rights. If we keep describing prostitution as immoral or dirty, we are just adding to the problem instead of solving it. I talked about some of the dangers of prostitution, but there are many more. In the line of work, prostitutes are objectified and dehumanized, which leads them to think about committing suicide, right? This is like a real part of their life. Imagine selling your body to pay your bills or food or maintaining your family and feeling like it's still not enough, like you are not enough. Due to these kind of thoughts, sex workers turn to drugs, right? And it also just adds to health issues problems and complicate things even more for them. The best thing that anybody can do to really understand it, like their situation, is putting themselves in their shoes. Now that there's a better understanding, right, of the dangers of prostitution, I want to introduce like some of the good things that legalizing prostitution can bring to a society and a country. The legalization of prostitution can form better relationships between sex workers and law enforcement. This would lower the cost of law enforcement, right? The jails will not be full of people that are just trying to make ends meet. And per the website of prosandcons.com, the rates of prostitution arrests are as high as 7,000 people in California, followed by 4,000 people in Texas. All of those hours that police spend booking, persecuting, arresting prostitutes can be put somewhere else, right? Like to convict actual criminals that are assaulting, robbing, killing people. And it has gotten to a point where even a sex worker can be compared to those heinous crimes. It would also be beneficial for women all over America. Imagine if we actually can change how police think about sex workers and how they validate their claims for assault and rape. If any other woman that is not in that line of work comes forward with a claim, they will be taken seriously. And this will just make people believe women even more. Think about all the time and resources that we can be putting to use somewhere else. And now also a big issue is sexually transmitted diseases, right? If there's a big like part of spreading is prostitution. If there was just an annual check required, then we could start at least battling the role that they play in spreading STDs. And there is no way of knowing who has been exposed to an STD to being with a prostitute, and that puts somebody else at risk. For the CDC, which is the Center of Diseases, and the National Public Health Institute in the Netherlands, which is one of the countries that has prostitution as legalized, there is a difference between the cases of chlamydia, which is the most normalized or like the most popular sexual transmitted disease. And the cases of chlamydia in the United States are 518 out of 100,000 people. And in the Netherlands, it is 117 per 1,000 people. And usually prostitutes don't actually check themselves because either of fear of being arrested or just being judged. If sex workers were employees of a legal institution, we could even have them like obligated to check themselves and even negotiate the use of condoms. Now that we understand a little bit more about the pros of legalizing prostitution, I want to talk about how we here in America can implement the legalization of prostitution and how it has been done in other countries. The Gallup Group database has an article by Abigail Hall called Prohibition of Prostitution Encourages Organized Crime. So it talks about how the criminalization of drugs, gambling, and prostitution has not made those activities disappear, right? It has only dragged them into the hands of organized crime and the black market. That is why countries like Denmark have taken a different approach, right? They legalize prostitution and they let women be independent sex workers. However, they still do have a long way to go because brothels and law protecting prostitutes and like health institutions that would treat sex workers with STDs are still illegal. It hasn't been developed as much. But that brings me to the second country, the Netherlands, which has gotten a lot more through, right? So they do have laws that protect prostitutes, and they even have designated zones as the red light district, where prostitutes can be, and brothels can operate and flourish their business. And then we also have Germany, which is the one that has made the most progress out of all, right? They not only have brothels and strip clubs legal, but they also allow independent work and street work. They also have open advertisement for like newspapers, magazines, the TV, like anywhere else. And they also, of course, have laws protecting prostitutes, and that has really changed the way that law enforcement commits and they treat prostitutes, and they take them seriously. Every country has its own ways of doing things, right? Like, because we have different societies, economic and political situations. So here in the United States, at first, only brothel, like to my plan, right? Brothels would be legal, and no independent or street work would be legal yet. That would just give time and allow people to get a better understanding and sensitivity towards sex workers. And prostitution would be illegal for anybody under 21, and advertisement can also be shown in specific websites or magazines. Sex workers will be taxed in advance. Each state will decide how much they get taxed per day. However, it cannot be more than $50 per day, and brothels will be also taxed as well. Brothels will need to give sex workers W-4s and W-2s, which will put the responsibility of the daily tax on them. And this will give like the start, right, of a long journey of trying to change people's views and how they think about sex workers. It is not easy, and I don't think that it will be easy, but not trying is too much of a risk. Today, I talked about the risk and concerns of criminalizing prostitution, how making changes we can see some good things that can come for it. And I also explained how some of the countries have taken the approach of legalizing prostitution, and how here in America, at least, we can start the progress for it. Now, let's remember that prostitution is the oldest profession, and it's not going to disappear anytime soon. So talking about how there are people in this world who still endure the kind of abuse the prostitutes go through is unacceptable. Legalizing prostitution is not about encouraging people to sell their bodies. It's about giving the same respect and rights to everyone, disregarding their line of work. And now let's go back to that first image, right? Of being oppressed and criminalized. And think about if it really is worth leaving prostitution illegal after how much you know now. Thank you.